Bring in New York Congressman Mike Lawler. He is a member of the House Financial Services and Foreign Affairs Committees. Congressman, good morning to you. And I want to just remind our viewers, just last week when Benjamin Netanyahu addressed Congress, what he said. He said, "We meet today at a crossroads of history. Our world is in upheaval. In the Middle East, Iran's access of terror confronts America, Israel, and our Arab friends. This is a clash between barbarism and civilization."
No question. And what we're seeing, obviously, is the result of a disastrous foreign policy under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Their appeasement of Iran has been the fundamental problem here. Iran is the greatest state sponsor of terror. They fund Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and other terrorist organizations in the region with the stated goal of eradicating the state of Israel. And if you look at what has occurred under the Biden-Harris administration, Iran has increased its petroleum sales by $100 billion since Joe Biden took office. Those funds are what is funding terrorism. Hamas gets 93% of its budget from Iran. And so this is something where appeasing Iran, appeasing its terror network does not work. Just a few years ago, President Obama tweeted out that sanctions would not result in Iran amassing power in the region. And that's obviously not true. Sanctions are critical here. And that's why I fought to get the SHIP Act and the Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act passed so that we can crack down on this illicit oil trade that is funding this terror network.
Well, look, there has been some commentary from some very well-respected energy analysts that say that the reason that the Biden administration has looked the other way about Iran's, to your point, illegal sales, unmarked ships full of oil that are mainly going to China buying the oil from Iran, is because they want to keep the global market prices down. They want to keep oil prices down because that affects U.S. gasoline prices. And in an election year, you don't want to see gas prices go higher. If that is the case, why isn't that being more discussed in Washington or being exposed?
Look, first of all, we don't purchase oil from Iran. The biggest purchaser is China. And obviously, under President Trump, China wasn't purchasing Iranian oil because it was made very clear to them that if they did, they would not have access to U.S. markets and everything would be 100% tariff. Now you have a situation where the Biden administration wants to lift sanctions on Iran, where they don't want to enforce sanctions on secondary buyers of Iranian petroleum. And so you see this influx of cash into Iran, which is funding its terror network. Yeah. U.S. oil and gas is separate and should be viewed as such. And the reality is we should be increasing domestic production of oil and gas here in the United States. The idea that Europe is reliant on Russia for its gas is absolutely outrageous at a time when Vladimir Putin invades Ukraine and wants to go after other former Soviet satellite states. That's why energy is so pivotal here. The United States should be a domestic net exporter of energy. We should be leading the charge. And we should be cracking down on the illicit oil trade between Iran and China. And we should be getting Europe off of Russia and its gas. And this administration has failed miserably in that task.
Listen, I also want to talk about some of the events we saw last week of course, on the heels of Bibi Netanyahu's speech. So those prosecutors in D.C. have now dropped charges against 11 of those anti-Israel demonstrators who were arrested. They were protesting the prime minister's address to Congress. Only 25 people were arrested during the protest, which did turn violent at times. You had people clashing with police. They vandalized statues, burning American flags. Congressman, that was the scene in the nation's capital last week. Why are these prosecutors going so light and letting these protesters basically they got to get out of jail free card?
Democrats talk often about the need to protect democracy. And I said very clearly what happened on January 6th was wrong. and people should be prosecuted for breaking the law. But those who storm a federal courthouse in Portland, those who burn down a police station in Minneapolis, those who engage in violent anti-Semitic protests at Columbia University, and those who burn an American flag and vandalize monuments in Washington, D.C. and assault police officers should equally be prosecuted. And this is why people have little faith in our government and in our institutions, because the law is not applied equally and evenly. And when you see these violent protests, when you see protesters defacing monuments, writing Hamas, holding Hamas flags, assaulting law enforcement, it's disgusting, it's shameful, and there should be consequences for it.
Okay.
But unfortunately, these woke progressive DAs refuse to prosecute crimes.
Right. Before you go, Congressman, just real quick, I do want to get your thoughts before you go on Vice President Harris saying that she had a key role in President Biden's Afghanistan withdrawal decision. Watch this real quick.
President Biden always said that he wants you to be the last person in the room, particularly for big decisions, just as he was for President Obama. He just made a really big decision, Afghanistan.
Yes.
Were you the last person in the room?
Yes.
And you feel comfortable?
I do.
Congressman, your reaction to that?
Well, I've been saying this since Kamala Harris ascended to the Democratic nomination. She is responsible hand in glove with Joe Biden for these disastrous policies that resulted in the death of 13 U.S. service members, the border crisis, the economic challenges we're facing as a country. She owns it, and I'm glad to see she admits it. That was a disaster for our nation. It was an embarrassment, and it resulted, again, in the death of 13 U.S. service members. We have had numerous hearings on that in the Foreign Affairs Committee, and they own it.
All right. Congressman Mike Lawler, Congressman, thank you for being here.
Thank you.